Greetings, Hyperboreans. Dave here, the developer of the Hyperborea system for Foundry VTT, back after a number of weeks with another video. Now, I realized just the other day that it had been about 6 weeks since my last video, and a number of releases. I'm not even sure. I think it's been 5 or 6 releases. Now, they've mostly been pretty small ones, just 1 or 2 features each time, so nothing huge. But I thought it was well past time, in any case, to do kind of a roll-up demo video showing off all the features that have been added since the last feature video, which was back with release 2.6. So here we're starting with 2.7, and we'll be going through the latest release, which just came out yesterday, which was version 2.12. And so yeah, we're going to just kick this off, diving in with the features that were added with release 2.7. So the first one was to add a pop-out button for the turn tracker. And that, as you can see on my screen, is this little guy right here in the upper right-hand corner. So this is the turn tracker, this spot here that's inserted into the chat bar. But if you click that little pop-out button, you can see he's shot over here, and he'll remember his location. So if I move it here, and you can see the pop-out now became an anchor. So I can re-anchor that, and it pops back into the chat. And then if I pop it out again, you can see it remembered its last location. So that is stored in the app in a flag. So it'll remember it even if you reset, log out of your game, log back in, whatever. It will remember its last location. I'm just going to go ahead and re-anchor that because I do prefer it in the chat bar. So that was the first feature. The next feature was for release 2.7. Was for long chat messages coming from like item or ability or spell descriptions to truncate the text, partially hide it, and provide an expand option. So as a perfect example there, I'm just going to open up Niella here, and I'll just send one of her spell descriptions over. And so we'll just do Cure Light Wounds. So I'm just going to do the eyeball here, and it pops over, and you can see now I've got an expand description link, and you can see how it nice fades there. If I expand it out, you get the full description, and now this changes to a hide, and again, if I just re-hide it, it's just like that. So that was added. And then the last feature that was part of release 2.7 was for quick character creation function to include new rolling methods. So originally, I believe it was methods like 1, 2, 3, something like that. But now, if you go into your settings, and we go into Hyperborea, and we go into here, and we look at the character and NPCs, the quick create feature here, here's your dice roll methods that are available to you now. So methods 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I also did tweak the method 3 functionality. So now previously it would just roll 4d6, drop low, and assign down the line. But of course, the true method 3 does allow the player to optimize those numbers. In other words, assign them to whichever attribute they want. So they just roll 4d6, drop low 6 times. They have a pool of 6 numbers that they can assign as they see fit. So this system now will actually take, and it will look at the character class that was selected, and it will optimize the top scores, the top attribute rolls, to the prime requisite attributes for that class. Whether the class has 1 attribute or 2 or 3, it will take the top 1 or 2 or 3 attribute scores and optimize those to the prime requisite attributes. And then the remaining ones that are non-prime will just be assigned in order. So whatever's left in the list, just from first roll to last, will just be assigned in order at that point. So it's it may not necessarily optimize the way a player would, and the players are certainly feel free to change things after they've done the quick create. You can just go in and move flip numbers around, but at least it does some optimization to make it maybe a little bit quicker for you. And then the other ones, we just added the new capability to drop low for prime attributes and 3d6 for the others. That one's new. 2d6 plus 6 was new. Did that. So that was the last feature that was part of the release 2.7. Okay, so release 2.8, we also had 3 new small features. So the first was to give an option to sort the items on the actor sheet alphabetically. So if we just pop open one of our character sheets here, now you can see there's this little A to Z sort, and what it does, I think I've already got it sorted here, but if I click it, you can see sorted 10 feature items A to Z, and what it does is it sorts the all of the abilities with no level attached, A to Z first. Then it starts looking at the level numbers, and if there's more than one with the same level number, it'll sort those A to Z within their little subgrouping. So this is the way it would sort. So these three, not alphabetically, but just individually by their level numbers at the end of the list. Okay? And let's see, if I look at Alaric the Frank, it might be a little more complicated here. He's got, he's a thief, so he's got a number of these abilities. And you can see what I did was I actually sorted all of the abilities with dice rolls near the top. I put detect secret doors that uses a D6 at the very top, then all the D12 rolls together, then the extraordinary dexterity, which is D100, and which can also just be done from the the feat of dex right there. And then you've got the non-die roll abilities, and finally the level linked abilities. So that's how I did it manually. Now if I just do it here, we may just see it change. And yes, you can see it sorted 17 items, A to Z, and you can see now it didn't care about the dice rolls. So Agile and Backstab rose to the top just because of A and B. Then we hit Climb. You can see Detect Secret Doors is here in the middle of the D12s as well as Extraordinary Dexterity. So that's what you're going to get by default with that sort feature. And that works the same for, it doesn't actually have it, as you can see. I didn't bother to do it with armor or weapons because those lists are generally pretty short. And at least in my experience, most people don't actually want them alphabetical. They want to put like their primary weapon at the top of the list, or maybe all their melee at the top and their missile at the bottom or something. Everybody has a different way of sorting things. But spells does work within your given level. It'll sort. Items also sorts, and it sorts down the line. So if you hit this, it'll do all the items even within the containers. So it'll do your arrows alphabetical. It'll do everything. I think I've already got things in order, but if I just quickly, sort something out of order like that in a backpack, and then I can go down and outside there, I do that. And then if I go back up here and I resort, you can see that it moved Thieves' Tools back down into order, and all the way down here, you can see it resorted these things. Leather Scabbard is a container, so that's why it's, rising above, but Potion is after Gauntlets. So that's how the sorting feature works. The next item for release 2.8 was to add a color intensity option to item light source properties. So let's look at how that would work. So if I go into items, I think I've got a torch in here. Yep, I do. If we go into attributes, you may remember that you've got a light source checkbox, and when you check that box, then you get this whole section that's boxed in here. If I uncheck that, the box fields are going to disappear. Now the fields are still in the data, so if I recheck the box, I didn't lose anything. It remembers all that stuff. But by default, an item is created, this is not checked, and all those fields are empty. So that's what it would be like. You check the box, you get a bunch of empty fields, and then you can populate them as needed. So what I added was this color intensity value here. You can see right now it defaults to blank. It's just null. But if you want to add an intensity, it's got to be a decimal between 0 and 1. So you might do something like, and by the way, you can arrow up and down within this. So it just defaults to going 0.05 for each step of up arrow and down arrow. And you can see I can raise the intensity. And as you do that, well, it increases both the intensity of the color, and to a degree it also increases the brightness as well. So the reason I did this was I noticed, and someone else even mentioned it to me as well, but it was noticed by more than one person, that if you have a map with a white or very light colored background, the light sources tend to be wash everything out. They're just extremely bright. So if you reduce the intensity to like 0.1, like I have it right here, that actually fixes that problem and allows you to start seeing your light colored background without everything being washed out. So that was that feature. And then the third feature for release 2.8.2 was to add a roll group initiative button in the group header of the tracker. So what that means is if I just go in here and I'm going to go ahead and kick off, just set up quickly a combat like that, and all the bad guys are in red, all the good guys are in blue. And what you get is now, I don't know if you may remember, as a player, this dice button would say roll my group. The tooltip would say roll my group, and it allowed players to roll for their group. But now what you can actually do is if you have a token in a group, you can roll for that group right here from this thing here, you can see the tooltip says roll red initiative, and up here it'll be roll blue initiative. There it is. So I can actually, now I'm logged in as a GM, so I have access to everything. But as a player, I would only have access to the blue because I don't own any of the tokens or the actors in the red group. So this would not be a link for me. It would still be there. It would be visible, but I wouldn't be able, it would not be clickable. But as it is, I can roll for blue just like that. And you can see group blue rolls for initiative, and it rolled the number. And of course, it now populates the text field here with a number 5, which was the actual die roll. And it sorts everybody. I haven't declared any actions, of course, but that all works. But then the point was that you can roll initiative from right here, which makes things much easier for group-based initiative. So, and that was it for release 2.8, those 3 features. The option to sort items alphabetically on the character sheet, the color intensity for light sources, and roll group initiative button. Moving on to release 2.9. The idea was to, I had an idea to make initiative in the combat tracker editable, and we're looking right at that. This used to be just a display of the number 5 just within the colored bar. I changed it to an actual input field, and I can now change this. So I can change it to a 4, I press enter, and now everybody's initiative is 4. And if you mouse over here, you can see the actual initiative value that's been assigned to the character. And you can see it's a 4 plus a decimal, which is, in this case, it's just their dexterity divided by 1,000 being added. Thus, you get 4.012 because this is Niella's dex, 12. Carrick also has a dex of 12, so he's got the same initiative. Dex of 15 puts him at 4.015, as you can see. These guys have nothing. They're all going to be null. They have nothing. You can see initiative is blank. But if I roll for red then with a roll of 1, so you can see initiative 1.011 because, again, dex is 11. And if I change this to a 2, the whole thing gets updated. So now it's going to be 2.011, as you can see. These guys, zombies, have automatic slowness, meaning they always act last in the round. So I subtract like 95 or 99 or something like that from their initiative, which is why he has a negative 95.997 initiative. It makes perfect sense. So yeah, that was that. That was release v2.9.1 was to make the initiative in the combat tracker editable. Okay, and again, only if you have permissions. GM can edit anything. Players can't edit that at all. Sorry, that to be clear, that's only for GMs to correct an error, right? So fix it for whatever reason. Maybe you wanted to assign a value, or for whatever reason, if you need to change that number, you can do so. Okay, moving on to release 2.10. We had 2 features added. The first was adding some new token statuses for partial cover and full cover. And what does that mean? Well, let's see. If I take Carrick here and I look at these statuses, click on that, we now have partial cover, or partial concealment, which is this kind of open fence, and then the brick wall is full concealment. And that does actually apply the AC bonuses, or effectively a penalty to anyone attacking him. So if I give him partial concealment like that, you can see partial concealment was added. You can see it was added in the chat there. So having applied the partial concealment, that will now affect missile attacks. Let's see, do I have a missile weapon here? I don't, but I could quickly do something like, let's just pretend this is going to be a short bow. So I'm just going to change that to a missile. I'm going to go 10, 20, and 30. That should be 20, not 200. So we're just going to make that a missile weapon, no big deal. And now, if he attacks Carrick, so we'll target Carrick, we're going to go like that. And you can see defender partially concealed, -2. But that only applies to missile weapons, not melee attacks. So, but it does work. And full concealment would give, it's either a -4 or -5, whatever it happens to be. But that's how that works. Okay, so closing him out. Actually, I'm going to even change this back to melee. Probably doesn't matter since it's my test environment, but there we go. Okay, let's see. We added the token statuses for partial and full cover, or concealment, more accurately. The other thing was to add flank and rear attack statuses. Okay, so once again, we go here, and you see you've got this little triple overlapping guy. That's intended to be a flank, like someone being surrounded by 2 other attackers. And then this one here is the rear attack. So these also have been added. And what these do is they grant you a bonus on your attack. So if I go let's say he is going to attack him. I'm going to take the cover off just because, but we're going to pretend he's flanked. Now the system doesn't actually know what flanking is, so it's totally on your honor or on the GM's honor, as the case may be. But if I add that flank now and I attack him, we'll go in here. We're going to go like that. You can see now flanking +1. So you're putting the flank attack on the person who is doing the flanking, not the person who's being flanked. And then it applies that +1 bonus. And if I change it from flanking to rear attack and do the same thing now, and you saw in the chat it says, you know, rear attack applied to Carrick. So now if I do this again, rear attack +2 bonus. Again, this is totally on your honor, so I can apply both. It would be cheating, of course. Those do not stack under normal circumstances, but now I do that, and you can see now it's applying a +3 bonus. So again, it does require some intelligence on the part of the user, but it does allow you to quickly and easily just apply that without having to remember to type a 1 in the situational modifier or anything like that. It's just there and ready to go for you by applying the flanking and the rear attack statuses. Okay, so those were the two features, those 4 statuses in 2 groups of 2 were both added with release 2.10. That was 2.10.0, I should say, because then I had a minor release 2.10.2, and it was a couple of very trivial things, which is why I didn't even bother incrementing the version from 2.10 to 2.11. And the idea was to remove the reroll each round initiative option. So some people may remember, you may not, but in the combat rules, the initiative type, the initiative persistence, there were 3 options here. It was keep same, reset, and then there was reroll each round. Well, the reroll each round, I basically realized that wasn't necessary. It really doesn't fit with anything with Hyperborea and the way the combat's designed. Even if you're doing an individual initiative, which is not rules as written by any stretch, even if you have it set to an individual initiative, you wouldn't necessarily want it automatically re-rolling, which is what real rolling was doing. At the end of the round, it would automatically just re-roll everybody's initiative. And I just realized it just didn't make any sense for Hyperborea and the way the rules work. So I just removed it. I just pulled that feature out. If anybody was using it, well, sorry. I'll be honest, I'm not going to add it back. Let's see, 2.10.2. So removing the reroll each round initiative option. The other one was to add a Homeland field to the character sheet. And that's hilarious. I don't know how I sort of overlooked this way back when I was designing this character sheet, but I have now added a Homeland field right here. So you can say I'm from Chromarium, right? Or wherever I happen to be from. And, you know, that should have been there all along. I guess maybe I assumed that people would just put it down in the biography or something, but having it in the Homeland field just makes it a little easier and quick to reference and just see it right there. I guess I also reworded the word religion to cult. I think the word religion is actually what's used in the player's manual, if I remember correctly, but you know, maybe this is just a me quirk, but I think of most of the quote-unquote religions in Hyperborea as cults. So I changed the wording to cult because I like it better. And I thought I actually think cult fits the sort of the genre of the sword and sorcery and weird sorcery, you know, genres coming from Robert E. Howard, coming from Clark Ashton Smith, especially coming from H.P. Lovecraft. I think cult fits better. So that was just a design choice that I made, and I changed that wording. Okay, moving on to release version 2.11. I had one feature added to that, which was to allow items to be transferred from a character to a treasure actor or a treasure hoard. So those of you who have been paying attention or have been around, you may remember when I implemented the treasure hoard, which was just a couple of months ago. It was pretty recent. And it's a new type of actor. So you create an actor, you know, you can call it whatever you want, right? Treasure hoard or whatever. And it is a treasure type right there. And then you end up with something like this guy right here. It looks like this. He's got regular equipment and items. I should say. It also has a weapons and armor section. So whatever you drag in here, it'll sort appropriately. Containers go into this grouping, non-containers go here, et cetera, et cetera. And then money would just go up here. And we'll get to the coin icons because I added those more recently. So, but yeah, the money fields go up here. And what I had was I had set this up so that people could obviously transfer items from the horde to the character, but they wouldn't be able to transfer an item from the character to the horde. And at the time, I just thought, well, why would you ever take your items and leave them in a horde? What it had not occurred to me was that some people are reusing this treasure actor type as a shared storage resource for a party. So it might be like a wagon, a horse-drawn wagon, or it could be a bank account, or whatever it happens to be, but they're using this as a shared resource and they want to be able to move items in and out from their character to the storage space and back. So someone requested that in the Northwind Discord, and I thought, that makes a lot of sense. So I went ahead and implemented it. So now I can take my items and I can go, oh yeah, you know what, I'm going to take and move these pretty beads over to the treasure hoard, and it says I can transfer, and I transfer, and you can see now I have pretty beads right there. And it reduced my pretty beads quantity from 1 to 0. It did not delete it. That's by design. I could make it delete it, but I just thought, okay, for now at least, I'm just going to reduce it to 0, because some people may be moving like arrows, but they want to keep an arrow listing even if the number is 0, and then they'll re-increment it later or something like that. So I just said, okay, I'm not going to delete it. I just reduce it to 0 and leave it at that. But that is that feature, and that was release 2.11. Moving on to release 2.12, there was, I had the idea to, and this is, 2.12 is the one I just did yesterday. I finally realized it, and this had been bugging me for a while. Money fields could not be transferred like items, okay? So I can drag and drop items, but I couldn't do anything with the money. And up until yesterday again, all I had was the letters CP, SP, EP, but no little icon. So what I did was I make the money fields draggable as well between characters and characters, or between characters and treasure hoards. Now it does not work with NPCs because they don't even have money fields. And it does not work with merchants because merchants buy and sell. So you don't have characters dragging and dropping money between them. So I added the icons to make it pretty, but it's not a draggable thing. I'm dragging right now. You probably can't tell, but I'm clicking and dragging and nothing happens. Because the point is, of course, like I said, you're going to sell something to a merchant, and the merchant is going to offer you some multiplier of the fractional multiplier, presumably, of the value of the item to the character, and then it will handle the math of coins in the background. So there's no need to drag coins back and forth. So, but for treasure hoards, yes, you can now do that. I can actually say, you can see Niela here, she's got 500 gold, but nothing of anything else. So if I just say, well, I'm going to drag, 500 silver, you can see, first of all, as I drag, you can see it's dragging the coin and the SP icon, and it's got a nice little green plus, and if I drop it on her character sheet, there it is, how many transfers. So I'm going to say, what did I say? I was going to do 500, I think. We'll just do that. We'll do a transfer, and now the SP has been reduced from 1,500 to 1,000, and the SP here has been increased by 500, okay? It handles if things are blanks, it handles zeros. So what the system does, it also has default behaviors, so you can't do a number that's outside the valid range. So here I've got 200 platinum, and I could do between 1 and 200, but no less. Obviously can't do 0, that would be silly. If I do that, it's actually going to change it to a 1. So if I do that, you see the platinum became 199. It says it transferred 1, and my platinum is now 1. It won't let you do an invalid number. I can drag this back, leave it as 1, boom. Now we'll have 0 and 200 over here. It likewise won't let me do more than that number. If I try to do 200 or 300, let's say, because that's way more than 200, it's just going to take the max. So now his PP platinum pieces are down to 0, and I got 200 here. So again, it does the math correctly, and it just caps it as that maximum number. So if someone mistypes it, it'll sort of still try to honor their request insofar as it's possible. And then, anything within a valid range, let's say I want to do 20, sure, no problem, obviously. It just does the math. So that's how that works. And yeah, these are draggable. You can go back and forth as you just saw me do. It does require that the player has permissions, full permission to the treasure hoard actor. Okay, so if you create this actor type, but you forget to assign your players permissions to it, they won't be able to do anything with it. So you do have to grant them full permission to the horde as a shared resource, so that they can drag and drop items to and from their own character, and it becomes very simple. All right, that was release 2.12. And then in the middle of all this, we had a few bug fixes. There was a point where when an actor receives the unconscious or bleeding or dead statuses, its real name would be displayed in the chat. So if you had a monster, for example, whose type was actually hidden from the players, like maybe you gave it an alias here. In my dev environment, I had Big Scary Orc for an Orc Necromancer, because the players don't necessarily know this is an Orc Necromancer. They just know it's a Big Scary Orc, right? So that's the kind of thing where you could put an alias in here, and that's what would appear in the combat tracker and elsewhere. But if they went unconscious or bleeding or dead, its real name would be in the chat, and we didn't necessarily want that. So fix that bug, so now it uses the alias, just like for everything else. There was an issue with phased initiative dice rolls, fixed that. There was an issue where if you refresh the page, these initiative numbers would disappear. The system would just sort of forget these initiative numbers. The individual character initiatives would be retained, so you'd still have the 4 point whatever here, but these numbers up here would be lost. So fix that. Let's see. There was also a weird bug that occasionally a new spell on a character sheet would get randomly renamed to unidentified item. Fixed that. And yeah, that's it for bug fixes. I can't reproduce any of those bugs anymore because they've been fixed. So nothing to demonstrate there, but just figured I'd mention those. And that's about it. That is it. It's a roll-up for releases 2.7 all the way through 2.12, the most recent one, which was like February 13th. Or February 12th, depending on what part of the world you're in. So that's it. Happy gaming, gamers, Hyperboreans. Dave signing off.